gentlemen, welcome to Azeroth Daily for the 28th of April 2011. My name is TotalBiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of WoW news and comment. In the headlines today, the Rise of the Zandalari patch is of course live, and there is a compilation of useful posts available over on the Battle.net site. They include information such as known issues, customer support and service issues, technical support, troubleshooting, Mac technical support, and a list of hot fixes. So that is worth having a look at if you're having any kind of issues whatsoever with this particular patch. That would be your one-stop shop for useful info. The answers to the Ask the Devs Q&A session, number 6, which was on the subject of guild advancement, have now been released over on the EU and US Battle.net forums for you to read, and the questions were determined by popular forum vote. So go and have a look if you have any questions whatsoever about the subject of guild advancement. I would imagine that your question is probably answered there, and if it's not, then maybe it wasn't worthwhile anyway. Either that or you're just not popular. In which case, I can't really help you with that. A new short story has come out entitled Vol'jin the Judgement by Brian Kendregan, which is a fairly awesome name, and this is a 10-page story which, needless to say, involves the one and only Vol'jin. There is also a bit of high-resolution art right here that you can use as a wallpaper, or just put on your phone. It's actually kind of ideal for putting on an iPhone or something like that, so I would recommend that you click that, and there's a link under there that says download in high resolution, and it's a very nice piece of art indeed. In fact, there are numerous pieces of art throughout this entire story, and I'm personally quite pleased to see that they're putting some effort into presenting the lore in this interesting fashion. So there you go. Those asking whether or not I would do an audiobook on it, probably not. The last audiobook we did didn't really go down all that well, so I'm not really doing anything like that anymore. But hey, you know, it's always nice to try different things. And with that, it's time for your Daily Blues. Edmundia seems to be extremely upset about the concept of graveyard camping and wonders why the graveyards in Warsong Gulch were actually lowered, and claims that Blizzard, for the millionth time, you fail, and actually gives a few more screenshots of so-called graveyard camping. And he's not a very popular fellow in this particular thread, I have to say, and people are claiming, oh, he's been outplayed and things like that. And Slaughter's responds by saying there are actually two forms of graveyard camping. One is having the attackers in and around the graveyard, controlling and or killing players as they respawn, and the other is bringing your flank carrier and sometimes entire team to the graveyard to negate as much as possible the viability of killing defending healers in order to bring down the flag carrier. And the elevation changes in the graveyard in Warsong Gulch address the second form by making it a lot harder for the flag carrier to get back into the flag room and capture should he choose to stick around in the graveyard, which to me seems fairly reasonable. Also, I might point out that I am of the opinion that if you do get camped on the graveyard, then you must have sucked pretty badly in order to get to that stage anyway, where your entire team is trapped and surrounded by the enemy, in which case perhaps you should stop sucking. That would be my opinion of it. And Slaucus finishes off by claiming that these alterations will actually allow for different tactical options, and some of the people in this thread seem to agree with that. I would highly recommend that you go and have a look at it, folks. It's a good thread if you have any interest in Battlegrounds. We've got one right here, which comes in from someone by the name of Xantius, unfortunately seems incredibly entitled, and wants an explanation as to the changes to PvP. And in this case, we're talking about the idea that the amount of conquest points that you earn are now fixed, regardless of what particular rank you happen to be. And he goes on to claim that it's a conspiracy, and it was left out of the patch notes due to the outrage it would cause. Well, actually, the outrage doesn't really matter, does it? Because if the outrage is happening, then it's happening now. It doesn't make any sense to leave things like that out of the patch notes, because it causes more outrage afterwards, and people assume conspiracies and nonsense like that. And he's claiming that nobody likes the arena point cap idea, and that it takes far too long to actually reach the point cap. Which, to me, seems like that wouldn't actually be the case, because what about the people that are below the mid-ranking? Surely it would have taken them longer in order to reach the point cap, and are you seriously suggesting that it should be okay for people to earn tons more conquest points if they happen to have a higher rank? I thought Arena was based on skill. Evidently it's not. It's actually based on who gets the best gear the fastest and is able to then take a big lead on everybody else, which is in fact the thing that I've always disliked about Arena, and the reason why I think it should be completely altered. But sadly it's not doing that. However, the second point, I have to say, seems fairly valid, and he's now claiming that you can now use Valor points in order to get PvP gear, which I actually wasn't aware of. That seems like a fairly ridiculous band-aid change, a knee-jerk reaction to the fact that people were having difficulty getting into the PvP game because, of course, they couldn't get any gear for it. I don't like that. I mean, it just shows to me how flawed the PvP system is, particularly arenas, and it's completely and totally broken. It needs to be utterly and totally rehashed. I had an idea ages ago, actually. I think it was at the start of Wrath or at the end of BC, about having a league system whereby you get a certain set of gear for that league and you're actually just given it. And it wouldn't be all that useful for PvE because it would be stocked full of loads and loads of resilience and the stats would be subpar, etc. But it was designed for playing within that league and it would come simply down to skill as opposed to who had the best gear. But apparently Blizzard doesn't want to do anything like that. Whatever the case, regardless of the fact that he has a few good points, he unfortunately does act like an entitled ass by saying, I'm a paying customer, blah de blah, and we can't all be no-lifers and so forth. Yes, quite. Also saying that no one likes this idea is a blatant lie. Someone will somewhere. Now, Zahim responds by saying that we saw that arenas and rated battlegrounds were over-rewarding players for the time investment required, particularly compared to points gains in PvE, so we changed it around a bit. I think what irritates me about that line is the fact that it shouldn't actually matter. These things shouldn't be crossing over. Why does it matter if you have to, say, raid for 20 hours a week in order to get the equivalent number of items that you get in PvP? Is this all it's about now? How many perps you happen to get? Is that... How long has it really been like that? For a very long time, sadly. It would be nice if people actually enjoyed the content for enjoying the content. Not because they happen to get some nice little reward at the end of it. There was a good comic I saw actually earlier that said, oh, I hate this, but I'm doing it because of the purples. My god, they're not real! So dumb. I understand that acquiring items is part of the enjoyment, but it should not be the sole purpose of it, which is the same reason I never ever did dailies, because I didn't care. Oh, but you can get some nice items, but it's boring and I'd rather be playing something else. Why would I waste my time on something that isn't enjoyable? This is my leisure time, it's not a goddamn job. Sad, so very sad that they're having to even consider things like this. It just shows how broken the PvP system actually is. It's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be grinding for items. He also goes on to say that the patch notes are actually compiled by him and that he never ever deliberately omits something, but please, by all means, feel free to continue to believe this particular conspiracy theory. Yes, quite. Now, speaking of conspiracy theories, we have the Bashiok defense thread coming up here from Valderix, and this is on the subject, of course, of Bashiok, who has been honestly battered over the last couple of days, to the point where I call him Batiok. Though what I will say is that Blizzard are big boys, and they really do not need this kind of white knighting, honestly. And the response to this from the Blue Post is in fact Bashiok, and says, I'm just moments away from a total flameout. Be sure you watch the official World of Warcraft website, Facebook and Twitter feeds to see the whole sordid tale unfurl. You can help speed up the process by interacting on them and enjoying the content. Yes, turning everything into a marketing ploy and then locking the thread after that. I'm not going to say leave Bashiok alone, but seriously, I would like to see most of the posters on the forum, regardless of whether or not they're EU or US, spontaneously combust on the internet. That would be very, very cathartic. And with that, it's time for your daily grind. Now, some of you might be aware of the quest line in the Red Ridge Mountains, which is basically Rambo, and we're going to be starting that one off right now. So what happens is, after a couple of generic kind of quests, you discover that there are invasion plans for Red Ridge with the Blackrock Orcs, and in order to save the day, you have to enlist the help of one John J. Keishan. Yes, quite. And you find him in the middle of some kind of bar fight in a ring, and he refuses to fight, and as a result, you are sent off to go and try and find his bow and his survival knife. Yes, and it continues along this vein. I'll show you some more elements of this quest as we go through, and if you do not have an Alliance character, I would highly recommend that you roll one just to play through this quest line, because it is extremely enjoyable. I'll show you the highlights of it as we go through the next few episodes. And with that, it's time for your weekly feature. This is Mod Your WoW. Right, we have 3 mods for you today, and bear in mind that the Mod Your WoW segment is also kind of a review segment, so I like to point out mods that don't necessarily do their job all that well, and suggest some improvements. So the first one is going to be Timer. Now, Timer is a nice idea, certainly, and what it does is it shows you approximately how long it will take for you to go and of course it does a basic average on things. It's a fairly basic mod, and I could certainly see the use of it in terms of timing things like evocations as well as mana gems, and of course for other classes, the mana reclamation abilities. In this case, though, the reason I don't like it is because it really has a very ugly looking frame, and it also covers up a very significant area of the screen. It doesn't appear to have any kind of transparency or anything like that, and the way that you scale the window is really, really dodgy, as I show you right here. It's not a very good scaling system. Or whatever the case, it does allow you to alert your group if you're running low on mana, which I would view to be a fairly useful thing. I just think it's a particularly basic mod and it needs a little bit more functionality. But if you're looking for a basic timer that really just does what it says on the tin, then you could certainly do far worse. The next mod goes by the name of ABC Notebook, and this is kind of useful. It is a notebook which goes across your different characters, and it has 20 pages which you can write all sorts of cool information in. Now, I can definitely see the use of this for, say, a raid leader that wants to make notes, or indeed anyone that's looking to just keep an eye on various different things. And what you can also do is you can publish the pages to a custom chat channel or guild chat or something like that, as you can see right there on the screen. So I can certainly see this as the kind of mod that you can just have installed. It doesn't take an awful lot of memory, and it's useful simply because there might be a time when you think, it would be really handy if I was able to write something down and actually have it accessible in-game, as opposed to have to write it down on WordPad or whatever. So that, to me, is a worthwhile modification. The final mod is something nice and simple, and I really don't see any reason not to have this. It's a very, very small UI change, and what it does is it actually alerts you as to how many justice points you happen to have and whether or not you are approaching the cap. It's called Enough Points, and it can be set to alert you on various different events, including on login, on joining a dungeon, or joining a queue, or things like that. So that, to me, seems very handy, and it pops up in a UI window. As you can see, it's not particularly special. There's not an awful lot of customization. You can change how many points it pops up at and the events that it triggers on. That really is about it, but I still think that's fairly useful. And since some people seem to forget about how many points they happen to have before heading into dungeons, I think that's something that people could definitely get a lot of value out of. Okay, now I did promise you that I would give you Achievement Hog, and that's exactly what I will do, and this is going to be featuring some achievements from the Noble Garden event. As per the last one we did, which was Love is in the Air, I'm going to be showing you some of the low-hanging fruit that you can get in order to grab a few really easy achievement points, since we're coming to the end of this particular event, and I also know that a lot of people really can't be arsed with doing all of the stuff. So the first achievement we're going to look at is Blushing Bride. This is really incredibly simple to get, and all you need to do is just cooperate with somebody in order to do this. You need to kiss someone wearing an elegant dress while wearing a white tuxedo shirt and black tuxedo pants. There is nothing difficult about this at all. I would highly recommend that you grab it for some easy achievement points, and you can just buy the things. You can then get the achievement and resell them if you like. It's really so very, very easy. However, bear in mind that some of the other achievements that you need involving the elegant dress and the white tuxedo shirt and black tuxedo pants, including Sunday's Finest and Dressed for the Occasion, must be looted by you, so they don't actually count. And that associates quite nicely with this. So if you are looking to get more achievement points, then of course try to get Sunday's Finest and try to get Dressed for the Occasion, which requires you to discover them by opening brightly colored eggs during the Noble Garden celebration, and that will give you triple points there if you're able to do both of those and then go into the Blushing Bride achievement. Here's another really easy set of achievement points for you, and it's called I Found One, and all you have to do for this one is to find a brightly coloured egg. Now, my recommendation for this is not, in fact, to run around in cities like Silvermoon in order to get things like this. What you want to be doing is going to some of the lower-level towns. We're talking stuff like Goldshire, Caranas, Azure Watch, Razor Hill, Bloodhoof Village, stuff like that. And if you head to those towns, you'll find that there are, more often than not, a lot more eggs dotted around the place than you will find elsewhere. It is perfectly possible to go and find them elsewhere, but this is the best bet. Admittedly, it might not be after I've told 100,000 people where they actually are, but hey, spread them around a little bit. So you just got to go and grab one of those, and since a lot of these are also key to getting other achievements like Sunday Best and so forth, that would be a good start for you and a good set of easy achievement points for those of you who are not looking to really get too in-depth on this particular event. Now, the last one I'm going to do is called Hard Boiled, and there are a wide variety of ways of doing this, but the best one has to be this. And in order to get this achievement, you have to lay an egg in Ungoro Crater's Galaka Hot Springs as a rabbit during the Noble Garden celebration. So first things first, where is the Galaka Hot Springs? You need to head over to the following coordinates, 3756. And the best way to do this is to get a friend to come along with you and get a hold of a blossoming branch. So what you do is you buy the blossoming branch from a Noble Garden vendor, and these are available either as a reward from the Great Egg Hunt or from a vendor in Duratar, Eversong Woods, Mulgore, Tirisful Glades for the Horde, and over in Azure Mist Isle, Dunmorrow, Elwyn Forest, and Teldrassil for the Alliance. You can buy these blossoming branches, and then you go over to the area, you just do a transform on your friend, and then you basically sit still for about 15 seconds until you lay an egg, and that is that. That's the easiest way of doing things. Anyone telling you, oh, well, you should just polymorph and then try and run through or get summoned, that's pretty much nonsense. Just get a hold of those blossoming branches, buy them from the vendor, no problem whatsoever, and the currency for that is 10 Noble Garden chocolate, or of course just do the Great Egg Hunt quest, and that will give you a reward from that, and all you need to do for that is gather 20 shell fragments, which is honestly very, very easy indeed. If you plan on doing it solo, then all I can really say is good luck. That makes things somewhat trickier, certainly. You could do it with, say, a Hearthstone or something along those lines, but still, if you take any damage while you're in this, it will actually pop you out of the form, so that's not what I would call particularly ideal. And with that, it's time for the mailbox. This one comes in from Jenny Crenshaw, who says, "Hello, TB. I watched your show for the 26th of April and heard you mention that they are beginning work on patch 4.2. Now, I understand that this patch will likely not be coming out anytime soon, but I feel as though Blizzard is starting to push out content in a bit of a rush, missing bugs amongst other things in their quickness to get these things out to the masses to play. I've been playing WoW since about the time it came out, about 3 months after it came out in the US, and I've noticed that both with BC and Wrath of the Lich King, Blizzard has slowly been getting faster and faster with bringing things out, especially between the time frame between BC and Wrath of the Lich King, only about a year or so difference. And when they came out, the content seemed like it was rushed so that players could go against Illidan and Lich King and Arthas. I've heard rumors, of course, that Blizzard might be planning on bringing Deathwing out in 4.2 to 4.3, which would be far too soon in my honest opinion. I'm a player who likes to take in the experience of the zones, etc., and I would like taking my time. I don't feel as though rushing things out actually helps the experience at all. My question is, do you feel that Blizzard seems to be rushing out the content in World of Warcraft, and what are your opinions on content being rushed out in any MMO game? So I've got some statistics for you right here that you might find interesting, and these are comparisons between the times between major patches. So back in TBC, the difference between patch 2 and 2.1, there was a 4-month gap. 2.1 to 2.2 was another 4-month gap. 2.2 to 2.3 was 2 months, and 2.3 to 2.4 was 3 months, and those are pretty much the major patches right there. In Wrath of the Lich King, 3 to 3.1 took 6 months, 3.1 to 3.2 took 5 months, and 3.2 to 3.3 took 4 months. Now, if we compare that to the patches we've had in Cataclysm, i.e. one major content patch, what you have is 4 to 4.1 took 4.5 months. So, if you compare the amount of content that's available in those patches, I would actually say exactly the opposite. I would think that no, they're not rushing things. What they are doing is scaling back the amount of content they're releasing over a certain time period, which to me indicates that they actually have less people working on the game. And the reason I believe this is simply because they have more projects going at once than anything else. And if you believe that leaked product slate, which so far everything from it has come true, they are working on Diablo 3, an expansion for StarCraft 2, some other StarCraft 2 thing called Phoenix, they're working on something to do with the WoW TCG, they're still working on patches for World of Warcraft, of course they're working on the next expansion as well, and they are also working on Project Titan. That's a lot of stuff, honestly, and that's not to count any kind of console porting that might be going on behind the scenes as well. So to me, it seems like there are less people working on WoW than there used to be, and that is reducing the amount of content which is coming in. In 4.5 months, for instance, for 2 rehashed 5-man dungeons doesn't seem to be reasonable to me, compared to the fact that in TBC, in between 2 and 2.1, which took less time, they released 2 full-sized raid dungeons, as well as 3 sets of daily quest areas and a wide variety of different things. So So, yeah, I think that perhaps your perception is a little bit flawed then. What you are seeing is lackluster content, not because they're rushing it, just because they're not putting enough effort and time and they don't actually have the resources anymore, which should scare you, honestly, considering the amount of money they've got. But really, what other explanation is there? You can't seriously tell me that 4.1 is substantial in comparison to either 3.1 or 2.1. I think the only thing that I actually agree with you on in regards to rushing would be Wrath of the Lich King, because as you were saying, Wrath came out about 6 months before it really should have, and funnily enough, the time between 3 and 3.1 was also 6 months, so that does indicate to me that they did rush it out, and that's where Ulduar happened to actually appear as a result of that, when it really should have actually been in the game from launch. So there you go. Okay, that mail took a long time to finish, so I'm going to cap off the show there because it's already run over 20 minutes, which is way too long for an Azeroth Daily. Thank you ever so much for watching the show. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow, well, hopefully a bit earlier than that. I want to try and get it out before Blue Please, and that'll be coming out with the postcards from Azeroth. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Please remember to thumb it up and favorite it if you like it. It really does help the show, and I very much appreciate you doing that, and I'll see you next time.